The betting started before Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez even finished unpacking her gear. $20, says the quiet mouse washes out in a week, Rodriguez whispered to Patterson, his voice carrying across the barracks with deliberate volume. She looks like she belongs in an office, not a combat zone. The other soldiers gathered around Rodriguez nodded their agreement, their eyes tracking Elena's movements with the casual cruelty of predators sizing up wounded prey. Elena continued methodically arranging her equipment, each piece placed with precise care that her audience interpreted as nervous fidgeting. Her movements were economical, practiced, but the watching soldiers saw only hesitation where confidence actually lived. Martinez leaned against his bunk, arms crossed, studying her with the kind of assessment reserved for entertainment. Think she's ever even fired her weapon outside of range? He asked, loud enough to ensure she heard every word. Before we dive deeper into Elena's story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar acts of courage in your military community. The afternoon sun streamed through the barracks windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor where Elena's boots made soft, measured sounds. Each step drew more attention from soldiers who had already decided she didn't belong among them. Her olive drab uniform fit properly, regulation perfect, but somehow the precision only reinforced their assumption that she was trying too hard to compensate for obvious inadequacy. Sergeant First Class Thompson entered the barracks, his presence immediately commanding attention from everyone except Elena, who continued her methodical unpacking. Thompson's eyes swept the room, cataloging the social dynamics with the efficiency of someone who had witnessed this particular drama countless times before. New meat always attracted the pack's attention, especially when that meat appeared vulnerable. "So what's your story, Vasquez?" Thompson asked, his tone carrying the weight of authority mixed with genuine curiosity. Elena looked up from her gear, meeting his gaze with steady brown eyes that held depths the watching soldiers couldn't begin to fathom. "Just here to do my job, Sergeant," she replied, her voice quiet but clear, each word precisely enunciated without the tremor her audience expected. The simplicity of her response drew snickers from Rodriguez and his companions. "Just here to do my job," Patterson repeated in a mocking falsetto, earning appreciative laughter from the gathered soldiers. Thompson's expression remained neutral, but Elena caught the slight tightening around his eyes that suggested he was less amused by the display than his subordinates assumed. Elena returned to her unpacking, extracting items from her duffel bag with the same methodical precision that had initially attracted their mockery. Her hands moved with economy of motion, never wasted, never uncertain, but her audience saw only the careful movements of someone afraid to make mistakes. They had already constructed their narrative about who she was, and every action she took was filtered through that predetermined story. Rodriguez approached her bunk, his swagger exaggerated for the benefit of his audience. "You ever been deployed, Vasquez?" he asked, using the casual tone of someone already certain of the answer. Elena paused in her unpacking, considering her response with the kind of careful thought that Rodriguez interpreted as fabrication preparation. "Few times," she answered simply, then resumed organizing her gear. "Few times," Rodriguez repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Where exactly?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, drawing the attention of every soldier in the barracks. Elena's hands never stopped moving, folding and arranging with mechanical precision. "Here and there," she said, her tone suggesting the conversation was already over. The non-answer frustrated Rodriguez, who had expected either nervous elaboration or embarrassed admission of inexperience. "Here, and there doesn't sound very specific," he pressed, stepping closer to her bunk. Elena looked up again, her expression calm but unreadable. "Some places don't make it into regular conversation," she replied, then turned back to her gear with the kind of dismissal that made Rodriguez's face flush with anger. Thompson watched the exchange with growing interest, his experienced, eye-catching subtleties that the younger soldiers missed entirely. Elena's posture spoke of someone comfortable with confrontation, not someone avoiding it. Her responses carried the weight of someone who had answered similar questions before, in circumstances where the stakes were considerably higher than barracks harassment. The other soldiers sensed Rodriguez's frustration and moved closer, forming a loose semicircle around Elena's bunk. The pack behavior was instinctive, automatic, driven by the same impulses that had governed military social hierarchies for centuries. Patterson stepped up beside Rodriguez, adding his voice to the interrogation. "Come on, Vasquez, we're all friends here. Where did you deploy?" Elena finished arranging her personal items and turned to face the assembled soldiers, her movement deliberate and controlled. Her stance was relaxed but balanced, weight distributed evenly, hands loose at her sides. Everything about her body language suggested someone completely comfortable with multiple hostile individuals crowding her personal space, but her audience interpreted it as resignation to inevitable harassment. "Afghanistan," she said simply, the single word carrying more weight than Rodriguez expected. He recovered quickly, sensing an opportunity to press his advantage. "Yeah? What unit? What did you do there? File paperwork? Make coffee for the real soldiers?" His questions came rapid fire, designed to overwhelm and embarrass, tactics that had worked effectively on previous targets. Elena's expression never changed, her calm remaining absolute in the face of increasingly aggressive questioning. "Did what needed doing," she replied, her tone carrying the kind of finality that should have ended the conversation. Instead, Rodriguez interpreted her brevity as evasiveness, proof that she was hiding her lack of real combat experience. Martinez joined the interrogation, emboldened by Rodriguez's aggressive approach. "What's your MOS, Vasquez? What's your actual job in this army?" The question carried implications about her fitness for whatever assignment had brought her to their unit, suggestions that someone with her obvious limitations couldn't possibly belong among them. 11 Bravo, Elena answered, referring to the infantry designation that made several soldiers exchange surprised glances. Rodriguez recovered first, his skepticism undaunted by the revelation. 11 Bravo? Really? You sure you don't mean 11 Bang Bang? The crude joke about cooking specialists drew laughter from his audience, reinforcing their collective decision that Elena was either lying or had somehow manipulated the system to gain an assignment she couldn't handle. Thompson's attention sharpened at Elena's MOS designation, his expression growing more thoughtful as he observed the continuing harassment. 11 Bravo infantry assignments weren't handed out casually, especially not to soldiers who appeared as unassuming as Elena. Something about the situation didn't align with his expectations, creating an itch of curiosity that demanded scratching. Elena shouldered her empty duffel bag and turned toward the door, her movement triggering a chorus of mockery from the assembled soldiers. "Running away already, Mouse?" Rodriguez called after her, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who believed he had successfully established dominance. Elena paused at the threshold, looking back over her shoulder with an expression that might have been amusement. "Just getting settled," she said quietly, then disappeared into the corridor, leaving behind a group of soldiers convinced they had successfully identified the weakest member of their pack. Thompson remained behind, studying the empty doorway with an expression that suggested he was considerably less certain about what they had just witnessed. The morning formation arrived with the brutal efficiency of military routine, soldiers assembling in perfect rows while the dawn light painted everything in harsh, unforgiving detail. Elena stood in the back row, her position automatically assigned by the social hierarchy that had crystallized overnight. Rodriguez had positioned himself prominently in the front, his chest puffed with the confidence of someone who believed he had already established his dominance over the unit's weakest member. Captain Morrison emerged from the headquarters building, his weathered face bearing the expression of someone who had witnessed every possible variation of military incompetence. His eyes swept the formation with practiced assessment, cataloging strengths and weaknesses with the efficiency of a man whose survival had once depended on accurately reading people. When his gaze reached Elena, it paused for a fraction of a second longer than protocol demanded. "Today we begin advanced combat training," Morrison announced, his voice carrying across the assembled soldiers with the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. Every soldier here claims to be infantry qualified. Today we find out who earned that designation and who simply received it as a clerical error. Several soldiers shifted nervously, but Elena remained perfectly still, her attention focused on Morrison with the intensity of someone who understood the implications of his words. Rodriguez turned slightly, catching Elena's eye with a smirk that suggested he already knew how this evaluation would conclude. The quiet mouse is about to get very loud when she realizes she's in over her head, he whispered to Patterson, his voice pitched just low enough to avoid Morrison's attention, but loud enough to ensure Elena heard every word. The training course stretched across 3 acres of carefully designed terrain, incorporating obstacles that tested every aspect of infantry competence. Rope climbs, wall scaling, weapons handling, tactical movement, marksmanship, and close-quarters combat scenarios awaited the assembled soldiers. Morrison's reputation for creating training that separated the capable from the merely present was legendary throughout the base. First exercise is the rope climb, Morrison announced, pointing toward a 30-foot structure that had humbled countless soldiers over the years. Full combat gear, weapons secured, 3 minutes maximum time. Anyone who fails to complete the climb doesn't continue to the next exercise. His words carried the weight of absolute finality, creating a tension that settled over the formation like morning fog. Elena checked her gear with the same methodical precision that had attracted mockery the previous day, ensuring every piece of equipment was properly secured before approaching the rope. Her movements drew snickers from Rodriguez and his companions, who interpreted her careful preparation as nervous delay tactics. "She's already looking for excuses," Martinez whispered, his comment drawing approving nods from the surrounding soldiers. Rodriguez stepped up to the rope first, his confidence on full display as he attacked the climb with aggressive determination. His technique was competent, if unrefined, muscle and willpower overcoming any deficiencies in form. He reached the top in 2 minutes and 15 seconds, dropping to the ground with a thud that emphasized his satisfaction. "Beat that, Mouse," he called toward Elena, his challenge drawing laughter from the assembled soldiers. Patterson followed with a time of 2 minutes and 30 seconds, his descent accompanied by boastful commentary about proper climbing technique. Martinez managed the climb in 2 minutes and 45 seconds, leaving Elena as the final climber while the previous participants formed an audience eager to witness her anticipated failure. Elena approached the rope with the same calm demeanor that had frustrated Rodriguez since her arrival. Her gear was properly secured, her weapon positioned exactly according to regulation, her stance suggesting someone who had performed this exact exercise countless times before. She reached up, grasped the rope, and began to climb with movements so fluid they appeared effortless. Her technique was flawless, each motion conserving energy while maximizing efficiency. She ascended with the smooth rhythm of someone who understood rope climbing not as a test of strength, but as an exercise in mechanical advantage and proper form. The watching soldiers fell silent as they witnessed a demonstration of competence that contradicted everything they had assumed about her capabilities. Elena reached the top in 1 minute and 45 seconds, 30 seconds faster than Rodriguez's best effort. She descended with controlled precision, touching down without the dramatic impact that had characterized the previous climbers. Her breathing remained steady, her expression unchanged, as if she had just completed a routine warm-up rather than a challenging military exercise. The silence stretched uncomfortably as the assembled soldiers struggled to reconcile what they had witnessed with their predetermined assessment of Elena's abilities. Rodriguez recovered first, his voice carrying forced bravado as he attempted to diminish her achievement. "Lucky climb," he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "Let's see how you handle something that requires real skill." Morrison observed the exchange with the detached interest of someone who had witnessed similar dynamics countless times throughout his career. Elena's performance had been textbook perfect, demonstrating not just physical capability, but the kind of technical precision that came only from extensive training and real-world application. Something about her climbing technique suggested experience gained in circumstances considerably more demanding than standard military training. The weapons handling station awaited them next, featuring disassembly, cleaning, and reassembly of the M4 carbine under time pressure. Rodriguez approached the station with renewed confidence, certain that weapons maintenance was an area where his experience would demonstrate clear superiority over the quiet newcomer who had somehow managed a lucky rope climb. His disassembly was competent, his cleaning thorough, his reassembly efficient enough to meet military standards. 2 minutes and 50 seconds, Morrison announced, recording the time with professional neutrality. Rodriguez stepped back from the station with satisfaction, convinced he had established a benchmark that Elena couldn't possibly match. Patterson and Martinez followed with times of 3 minutes and 10 seconds and 3 minutes and 20 seconds respectively. Their performances solid, if unspectacular. Elena stepped up to the weapons station while the previous participants formed their familiar audience, ready to witness her struggle with equipment that required genuine expertise to handle properly. Elena picked up the M4 with hands that moved with unconscious familiarity, her grip and stance suggesting someone who had handled similar weapons thousands of times before. Her disassembly was conducted with mechanical precision, each component removed in perfect sequence without hesitation or uncertainty. The cleaning process followed with the same methodical efficiency, every surface addressed with the thoroughness of someone who understood that weapon maintenance was literally a life-or-death responsibility. Her reassembly was a masterpiece of coordinated movement, fingers working with the kind of muscle memory that came only from countless repetitions under stress. The completed weapon functioned flawlessly, passing Morrison's inspection without a single deficiency noted. 1 minute and 35 seconds, Morrison announced, his tone carrying a hint of surprise that he quickly suppressed. The assembled soldiers stared at Elena with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. Her time had shattered Rodriguez's best effort by more than a minute, demonstrating a level of weapons familiarity that contradicted every assumption they had made about her background and experience. Rodriguez's face flushed with embarrassment and growing anger as he realized his position as the unit's presumed alpha was under serious threat. "Just beginner's luck," Rodriguez muttered, his words lacking conviction but serving as a desperate attempt to maintain his psychological dominance. Elena said nothing, simply checking her gear with the same methodical precision that had initially attracted their mockery. Her silence frustrated Rodriguez further, denying him the defensive response he needed to justify his increasingly aggressive challenges. Morrison called for a tactical movement exercise, pointing toward a course that required soldiers to navigate obstacles while maintaining proper spacing and communication protocols. The exercise tested not just physical ability, but tactical awareness and decision-making under pressure. Rodriguez saw it as his opportunity to definitively prove that Elena's previous successes were flukes rather than indicators of genuine competence. Elena positioned herself at the starting point, her stance relaxed but alert, eyes scanning the course with the kind of systematic assessment that suggested extensive experience with similar challenges. The watching soldiers prepared themselves for the entertainment of witnessing her inevitable struggle with an exercise that required real infantry skills rather than simple physical ability or memorized procedures. The tactical movement course stretched across terrain designed to break confidence and expose weaknesses, its obstacles positioned with the calculated precision of someone who understood exactly how to test infantry soldiers under pressure. Elena studied the layout with the methodical assessment of someone reading familiar territory, her eyes tracking sight lines and cover positions with automatic efficiency that escaped her increasingly frustrated audience. Rodriguez positioned himself for the exercise with exaggerated confidence, his movements designed to broadcast competence to both Morrison and his fellow soldiers. "This is where real infantry training shows," he announced loudly, ensuring Elena heard every word. Can't fake your way through tactical movement when bullets are flying. His reference to combat experience was deliberate, calculated to remind everyone that Elena's quiet responses to questions about deployment suggested someone hiding her lack of real-world application. Morrison raised his hand, signaling the start of the exercise. Rodriguez launched himself forward with aggressive determination, his approach emphasizing speed over precision. He navigated the initial obstacles with competent, if unrefined, technique. His progress marked by the kind of controlled chaos that characterized soldiers who relied more on physical ability than tactical sophistication. Elena waited for her turn with the same calm patience that had frustrated Rodriguez since her arrival. Her stance remained relaxed, weight balanced, hands loose at her sides in a posture that suggested someone completely comfortable with hostile observation. The watching soldiers interpreted her stillness as nervous hesitation, another confirmation that she was struggling to maintain her facade of competence. Rodriguez completed the course in 4 minutes and 20 seconds, his time respectable, if not exceptional. He jogged back to the starting position with satisfaction evident in every step, convinced he had finally established a benchmark that would expose Elena's limitations. "Let's see the mouse navigate that maze," he called out, his voice carrying the cruel anticipation of someone expecting to witness public humiliation. Elena approached the starting line while Patterson provided running commentary designed to undermine her confidence. "Watch her freeze up when she realizes she can't just memorize her way through this one," he said, his words drawing approving nods from the assembled soldiers. Tactical movement requires instincts you only develop in real combat situations. Morrison's signal sent Elena into motion with fluid efficiency that immediately distinguished her approach from Rodriguez's aggressive assault. She moved with the controlled precision of someone who understood that tactical movement was about minimizing exposure while maximizing progress, each step calculated to reduce vulnerability rather than simply cover ground quickly. Her navigation of the first obstacle demonstrated technique that suggested extensive training in environments considerably more demanding than standard military exercises. She flowed over barriers with movements that wasted no energy, her weapon handling throughout the exercise maintaining perfect muzzle discipline while never impeding her progress. Everything about her approach spoke of someone who had performed similar movements when the consequences of mistakes extended far beyond training scores. The watching soldiers fell into increasingly uncomfortable silence as Elena's performance contradicted their expectations with mechanical precision. She negotiated each obstacle with the same fluid efficiency, her timing and spacing suggesting someone who had internalized tactical movement principles through extensive real-world application. Her progress through the course resembled a masterclass in infantry techniques rather than a struggling soldier's desperate attempt to avoid failure. Rodriguez's confidence crumbled as Elena's time approached and then surpassed his performance, her movements never faltering despite the increasing complexity of the obstacles. She completed turns with proper clearing techniques, maintained appropriate spacing throughout, and demonstrated communication protocols with the automatic precision of someone who had relied on such procedures in circumstances where mistakes meant casualties. Elena crossed the finish line in 3 minutes and 45 seconds, 35 seconds faster than Rodriguez's best effort, while demonstrating superior technique throughout. She jogged back to the starting position with her breathing still controlled, her expression unchanged, as if she had just completed a routine exercise rather than a challenging test of infantry competence. The silence stretched beyond uncomfortable into genuine confusion as the assembled soldiers struggled to reconcile Elena's consistent superior performance with their predetermined assessment of her capabilities. Rodriguez's face flushed with embarrassment and growing anger, his position as the unit's presumed leader undermined by a quiet woman who refused to conform to their expectations. "Must have run that exact course before," Rodriguez muttered, his explanation sounding desperate even to his own ears. Elena said nothing, simply checking her gear with the same methodical precision that had characterized every action since her arrival. Her silence denied Rodriguez the defensive response he needed to rationalize his diminished status. Morrison observed the social dynamics with the detached interest of someone who had witnessed similar patterns countless times throughout his military career. Elena's performance suggested training and experience that extended far beyond standard infantry qualification. Yet her personnel file contained no indicators of advanced schools or specialized assignments that would explain her demonstrated competence. Patterson attempted to support Rodriguez's fragmenting confidence with increasingly strained explanations for Elena's superior performance. "Anyone can look good on these training courses," he announced with forced authority. "Real combat is completely different from controlled exercises." The implication that Elena lacked genuine combat experience hung in the air like a challenge, waiting for her to defend herself with the kind of detailed stories that would validate or destroy their assumptions. Elena continued her equipment check with mechanical precision, her attention focused on tasks that seemed more important than responding to increasingly desperate attempts to diminish her achievements. Her indifference to their psychological pressure frustrated Rodriguez further, denying him the confrontation he needed to re-establish his dominance through verbal aggression. Morrison called for the marksmanship exercise, pointing toward a range where targets waited at varying distances to test accuracy under time pressure. Rodriguez saw the exercise as his final opportunity to prove that Elena's previous successes were flukes rather than indicators of genuine competence. Shooting required not just technical skill, but the kind of calm under pressure that came only from extensive combat experience. The range was configured to challenge even experienced marksmen, with targets positioned at distances that required precise sight adjustment and environmental compensation. Wind conditions added complexity that would separate competent shooters from those who had simply memorized basic marksmanship principles. Rodriguez approached the firing line with renewed confidence, certain that his proclaimed combat experience would finally provide decisive advantage. Elena followed the group toward the range with the same measured pace that had characterized her movement since the morning formation. Her weapon handling remained textbook perfect, muzzle discipline maintained automatically while her eyes scanned the range with systematic thoroughness. Everything about her approach suggested someone who viewed marksmanship as a routine skill rather than a challenging test. Rodriguez took his position at the firing line, his stance aggressive and confident as he prepared to demonstrate the shooting skills that would finally expose Elena's limitations. The watching soldiers gathered behind the firing positions, ready to witness the definitive proof that their initial assessment of the quiet newcomer had been correct despite her unexpected success in the previous exercises. The targets stood ready at distances ranging from 100 to 400 meters, their positioning designed to test every aspect of marksmanship competence under time pressure. Morrison's range commands would control the exercise pace, allowing no time for lengthy sight adjustment or extensive environmental calculation. Success would require the kind of automatic competence that came only from thousands of rounds fired under stress. Elena chambered her first round with movements so smooth they appeared effortless, her weapon handling demonstrating the unconscious precision of someone who had performed identical actions countless times before. The watching soldiers prepared themselves to witness either the continuation of her impossible success or the inevitable revelation that her previous achievements had been elaborate accidents. Rodriguez settled into his firing position with the confidence of someone who believed marksmanship would finally expose Elena's limitations, his stance aggressive and determined as he prepared to demonstrate skills honed through what he claimed was extensive combat experience. The watching soldiers gathered behind the firing line with renewed anticipation, certain that shooting would reveal the truth about their quiet newcomer's actual capabilities. Morrison's range commands echoed across the firing line with military precision, establishing time limits that would prevent lengthy sight adjustment or careful environmental calculation. 60 seconds per target sequence, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone whose range rules had separated competent shooters from pretenders for over 2 decades. No coaching, no second chances, no excuses. The first target appeared at 100 meters, a distance that should have been manageable for any qualified infantry soldier, but challenging enough under time pressure to expose fundamental weaknesses. Rodriguez acquired his sight picture with practiced efficiency, his breathing controlled as he prepared to fire the shot that would re-establish his dominance over the unit's social hierarchy. His first round struck the target near center mass, a respectable hit that drew approving nods from the watching soldiers. Rodriguez's confidence surged as he transitioned to the 200-meter target, his movements deliberate and controlled. His second shot landed slightly left of center, but within acceptable parameters, maintaining his reputation as a competent marksman. The 300-meter target required more precise calculation, demanding compensation for wind drift and bullet drop that separated experienced shooters from those who had simply memorized basic principles. Rodriguez adjusted his sight picture with the careful precision of someone who understood the mathematics involved, his trigger control steady as he fired his third round. His shot struck the target's outer ring, acceptable under the circumstances, but less impressive than his previous efforts. Rodriguez completed the sequence with a 400-meter shot that barely caught the target's edge. His performance respectable, if not exceptional. 4 hits out of 4 attempts, Morrison recorded, his tone professionally neutral despite Rodriguez's obvious satisfaction. Patterson and Martinez followed with similar performances, their shooting competent enough to meet military standards while providing no particular distinction. The assembled soldiers maintained their confident anticipation as Elena approached the firing line, convinced that marksmanship would finally reveal the limitations that her previous successes had somehow concealed. Elena settled into her firing position with movements so fluid they appeared rehearsed, her weapon handling demonstrating the unconscious precision of someone who had performed identical actions thousands of times before. Her stance was textbook perfect, weight distribution optimal, breathing controlled with the automatic rhythm of someone who understood shooting as a mechanical process rather than a test of nerves. Morrison's commands initiated Elena's sequence with the same time pressure that had challenged the previous shooters. The 100-meter target appeared, and Elena's response was immediate, her sight acquisition and trigger press occurring with mechanical precision that suggested extensive muscle memory development. Her first round struck dead center. The impact so precisely placed it appeared intentional rather than fortunate. The watching soldiers exchanged glances that mixed surprise with growing unease as Elena transitioned to the 200-meter target with the same fluid efficiency. Her sight adjustment was minimal, suggesting someone who understood ballistics well enough to compensate automatically rather than relying on extensive calculation. Her second shot struck the center ring with precision that eliminated any possibility of accident. Rodriguez's confidence began fragmenting as Elena's performance continued to exceed his own efforts with apparent ease. Her transition to the 300-meter target occurred without the lengthy sight adjustment that had characterized his approach, her movements suggesting someone who had internalized the compensation calculations through extensive practice under stress. Elena's third shot struck the target's center with precision that drew involuntary murmurs from the watching soldiers. Her technique remained flawless, breathing controlled, trigger press smooth, follow-throw automatic. Everything about her shooting demonstrated the kind of competence that came only from extensive training combined with real-world application under pressure. The 400-meter target required the most precise calculation, demanding environmental compensation that challenged even experienced marksmen. Elena's sight adjustment was minimal, her movements suggesting someone who read wind and distance with automatic efficiency developed through countless repetitions in varying conditions. Her final shot struck the center ring with precision that silenced the watching soldiers completely. For perfect hits, Morrison announced, his voice carrying a hint of surprise that he quickly suppressed. Elena rose from her firing position with the same calm demeanor that had characterized every action since her arrival, her breathing unchanged despite delivering a shooting performance that had exceeded every other soldier's efforts. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Rodriguez and his companions struggled to reconcile Elena's superior marksmanship with their predetermined assessment of her capabilities. Her shooting had demonstrated not just technical competence, but the kind of automatic precision that suggested extensive combat experience, contradicting their assumptions about her background and training. Rodriguez attempted to rationalize Elena's performance with explanations that sounded increasingly desperate even to his own ears. "Must have been a sniper or something before transferring here," he muttered, his words lacking conviction, while serving as a transparent attempt to diminish her achievement by suggesting it resulted from specialized training rather than general infantry competence. Elena said nothing, simply conducting her post-shooting equipment check with the same methodical precision that had characterized every action since the morning formation. Her silence frustrated Rodriguez further, denying him the detailed explanation he needed to categorize and dismiss her superior performance through familiar stereotypes. Morrison observed the social dynamics with growing interest, his experienced eye recognizing signs that suggested Elena's background contained elements not reflected in her standard personnel file. Her consistent superior performance across multiple skill sets indicated training and experience that extended far beyond typical infantry qualification, yet her records showed nothing that would explain such comprehensive competence. Patterson attempted to support Rodriguez's fragmenting confidence with increasingly strained theories about Elena's unexpected success. "Maybe she's one of those competitive shooters who joined the army," he suggested, his explanation ignoring the fact that her tactical movement and weapons handling skills had demonstrated combat-specific training rather than civilian marksmanship experience. The assembled soldiers began their transition toward the next training station, while Rodriguez's group maintained their skeptical commentary, their voices carrying the forced confidence of people whose worldview was under systematic assault. Elena followed the group with her characteristic measured pace, her attention focused on equipment checks that seemed more important than responding to their increasingly desperate attempts to explain away her achievements. Morrison called for the close-quarters combat exercise, pointing toward mats where soldiers would demonstrate hand-to-hand combat skills under controlled conditions. Rodriguez saw the exercise as his opportunity to finally prove that Elena's previous successes had been flukes, certain that physical confrontation would expose the limitations that marksmanship and tactical movement had somehow failed to reveal. The combat exercise would test not just technique, but the kind of aggressive mindset that Rodriguez believed separated real warriors from those who had simply memorized procedures during training. Elena's quiet demeanor suggested someone who would struggle with the psychological pressure of physical confrontation, providing the perfect opportunity to re-establish the social hierarchy that her unexpected competence had disrupted. Elena approached the combat area with the same calm assessment that had characterized her evaluation of every previous challenge, her eyes scanning the training setup with systematic thoroughness. Her stance remained relaxed but balanced, suggesting someone who viewed close-quarters combat as another routine skill rather than an intimidating test of warrior mentality. The combat mats stretched across the training area like a gladiatorial arena, their worn surfaces bearing witness to countless confrontations between soldiers testing their skills against each other. Rodriguez stepped onto the nearest mat with renewed confidence, convinced that hand-to-hand combat would finally expose Elena's limitations through direct physical confrontation that couldn't be explained away by lucky shots or memorized procedures. Morrison outlined the exercise parameters with military precision, his voice carrying across the training area with the authority of someone whose combat rules had prevented serious injuries for over 20 years. Controlled engagement, no strikes to head or joints, submission or clear dominance determines victory, he announced, his words establishing boundaries that would allow genuine testing without permanent damage. The watching soldiers formed a circle around the mats, their anticipation evident as they prepared to witness what they believed would be Elena's first obvious failure. Rodriguez had positioned himself as her obvious opponent. His size advantage and proclaimed combat experience, creating expectations that this exercise would finally restore the social hierarchy that Elena's unexpected competence had disrupted. Staff Sergeant Williams approached the group with a measured stride of someone whose training credentials commanded automatic respect throughout the base. Williams had earned his reputation through 2 decades of teaching close-quarters combat to soldiers who later credited his instruction with saving their lives in real-world confrontations. His presence elevated the exercise from routine training to serious evaluation. Williams studied Elena with the systematic assessment of someone who had evaluated thousands of soldiers, his experienced eye cataloging details that escaped less trained observers. Her stance was balanced without appearing defensive, weight distributed properly, hands relaxed but positioned to respond instantly to threats. Everything about her posture suggested someone completely comfortable with the prospect of physical confrontation. "Rodriguez, you're up first," Williams announced, pointing toward the mat where Elena waited with characteristic calm. Rodriguez approached with exaggerated confidence, his movements designed to broadcast physical superiority to both the instructor and his audience. His size advantage was obvious. His reach longer, his muscle mass greater than Elena's compact frame suggested she could overcome. The fighters positioned themselves according to Williams' instructions, facing each other across the mat, while the assembled soldiers formed their expectant audience. Rodriguez's stance was aggressive, forward-leaning, designed to intimidate through obvious physical presence. Elena remained balanced and alert, her posture suggesting someone who viewed physical confrontation as another technical skill rather than a test of courage. Williams signaled the start of the engagement with a sharp command that sent Rodriguez forward with aggressive determination. His approach relied on overwhelming Elena through superior size and strength, tactics that had proven effective against smaller opponents who lacked the technical skills to neutralize physical disadvantages through superior technique and positioning. Elena's response was immediate and devastating in its efficiency. She sidestepped Rodriguez's initial charge with fluid precision, using his momentum against him while applying a leverage throw that sent him crashing to the mat with stunning force. The entire sequence lasted less than 3 seconds, transforming Rodriguez's confident attack into spectacular failure through technical superiority that left the watching soldiers stunned into silence. Rodriguez struggled to his feet with embarrassment evident in every movement, his confidence shattered by an encounter that had exposed his limitations through Elena's superior skills. His face flushed with anger and humiliation as he realized that his proclaimed combat experience had proven inadequate against someone whose quiet demeanor had concealed genuine expertise. Williams observed the exchange with professional interest, his experienced eye-recognizing techniques that suggested extensive training in combat systems considerably more sophisticated than standard military instruction. Elena's throw had demonstrated not just physical skill, but the kind of automatic response patterns that developed only through countless repetitions under stress. "Let's try that again," Rodriguez demanded, his voice carrying the desperate edge of someone whose reputation required redemption through continued confrontation. Williams nodded approval for the second engagement, curious to see whether Elena's initial success represented genuine skill or fortunate accident that couldn't be repeated under pressure. The second engagement began with Rodriguez adopting a more cautious approach, his initial aggression tempered by respect for Elena's demonstrated capabilities. He circled her carefully, looking for openings while attempting to use his reach advantage to maintain distance that would prevent her from applying the close-quarters techniques that had proven so effective. Elena remained centered and balanced, her movement tracking Rodriguez's positioning with automatic precision, while her stance suggested someone completely comfortable with extended tactical maneuvering. Her patience was absolute, waiting for the optimal moment to engage rather than forcing confrontation through aggressive action that might create unnecessary risks. Rodriguez attempted a controlled takedown that relied on technique rather than raw aggression, his approach demonstrating improved tactical thinking even as it revealed the limitations of his actual combat training. Elena's counter was instantaneous, redirecting his energy while applying a submission hold that forced immediate surrender through leverage that made resistance impossible. The watching soldiers stared at Elena with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief as Rodriguez tapped out for the second time in less than 5 minutes. Her combat skills had demonstrated technical superiority that contradicted every assumption they had made about her background, training, and experience. The Quiet Mouse had just systematically dismantled their presumed alpha through superior fighting abilities. Williams approached Elena with evident professional curiosity, his experienced assessment recognizing signs that suggested training considerably more advanced than standard military combat instruction. "Where did you learn to fight like that, Vasquez?" he asked, his question carrying genuine interest rather than the skeptical challenges that had characterized previous interactions. Elena's response maintained the same economy of words that had frustrated her interrogators since her arrival. "Here and there," she replied, using the identical phrase that had initially sparked Rodriguez's aggressive questioning about her deployment history. Her brevity denied Williams the detailed explanation he sought while suggesting depths of experience that standard personnel files rarely captured. The evasive answer frustrated Rodriguez further, his humiliation compounded by Elena's refusal to provide the kind of detailed background information that would allow him to categorize and rationalize her superior performance. His inability to understand her training or experience left him with no framework for explaining his repeated defeats. Patterson attempted to support Rodriguez's fragmenting confidence with increasingly desperate theories about Elena's unexpected success. "Maybe she's some kind of martial arts instructor who joined the army," he suggested, his explanation ignoring the fact that her combat techniques had demonstrated military-specific training rather than civilian self-defense methods. Williams called for additional pairings to continue the exercise evaluation, his interest in Elena's capabilities evident as he arranged matchups that would test her skills against different opponents with varying approaches. The assembled soldiers watched with growing unease as Elena systematically defeated every challenger through technical superiority that made their size and strength advantages irrelevant. Morrison observed the training progression with mounting curiosity about Elena's true background, her consistent superior performance across every skill set, suggesting training and experience that extended far beyond her personnel file's limited information. Her combat abilities had demonstrated the kind of automatic competence that developed only through extensive real-world application under extreme stress. The close-quarters combat exercise concluded with Elena having defeated every opponent through technical dominance that left no room for alternative explanations. Rodriguez and his companions stood in uncomfortable silence, their initial confidence replaced by confused recognition that their assumptions about the quiet newcomer had been systematically proven wrong through undeniable demonstration. The afternoon brought the most challenging exercise yet, a comprehensive field test that would combine every skill demonstrated individually throughout the morning into a single integrated scenario designed to break soldiers who possess competence in isolated areas but lacked the tactical sophistication to coordinate multiple abilities under stress. Morrison outlined the parameters with the methodical precision of someone whose scenarios had exposed countless weaknesses over the years. "Full combat simulation," he announced, his voice carrying across the assembled soldiers with absolute authority. Navigation, marksmanship, tactical movement, and close-quarters combat integrated into a single exercise that will test your ability to function as infantry soldiers rather than specialists in individual skill sets. The implications were clear. Previous successes meant nothing if soldiers couldn't coordinate their abilities under the psychological pressure of comprehensive evaluation. Rodriguez saw the integrated exercise as his final opportunity to prove that Elena's superior performance in individual skills meant nothing when combined into realistic combat scenarios. Real infantry work requires coordination and decision-making under pressure, he announced to his companions, his voice carrying forced confidence designed to convince himself as much as his audience that Elena would finally reveal her limitations. The course stretched across 5 acres of carefully designed terrain that incorporated every challenge the soldiers had faced individually, while adding the complexity of navigation under time pressure with limited information. Success required not just technical competence, but the kind of tactical thinking that developed only through extensive real-world application in circumstances where mistakes meant casualties rather than training scores. Elena studied the course layout with systematic thoroughness, her eyes tracking sight lines and cover positions with automatic efficiency that suggested someone reading familiar territory rather than encountering new challenges. Her assessment was methodical and complete, cataloging every detail that would influence tactical decision-making throughout the exercise. Morrison provided each soldier with identical maps, marked with checkpoint locations and objective requirements. The information deliberately limited to forced tactical improvisation rather than simple execution of predetermined plans. Time limit is 45 minutes, he announced, establishing pressure that would separate competent soldiers from those who crumbled under stress. Rodriguez launched into the exercise with aggressive determination, his approach emphasizing speed over precision as he attempted to overcome tactical complexity through raw enthusiasm. His navigation was competent, if unrefined, his movement noisy enough to compromise stealth requirements, his decision-making rushed by the psychological pressure of time constraints. Elena began her exercise with measured assessment, taking precious seconds to study terrain and plan her route while Rodriguez had already disappeared into the course's first section. Her deliberate approach drew skeptical comments from the watching soldiers who interpreted her careful planning as hesitation rather than tactical sophistication. The first checkpoint required precise navigation through dense vegetation while maintaining noise discipline that would prevent detection by simulated enemy forces. Rodriguez's aggressive approach had carried him quickly to the general area, but his noisy movement patterns had triggered multiple penalty markers that would significantly impact his final score. Elena navigated the same section with ghost-like silence, her movement through vegetation so controlled it appeared effortless. Every step was placed with conscious precision, her route selection demonstrating intimate familiarity with tactical movement principles that went far beyond standard infantry training. She reached the checkpoint without triggering any penalty markers, her stealth capabilities suggesting extensive experience in environments where detection meant death. The second checkpoint demanded marksmanship under stress, with targets appearing at random intervals requiring immediate engagement while maintaining movement toward the next objective. Rodriguez's shooting was competent under the circumstances, his hits acceptable if not exceptional, his transition between targets efficient enough to meet minimum standards. Elena's approach to the marksmanship challenge demonstrated the same mechanical precision that had characterized her range performance, each shot placed with devastating accuracy despite the added complexity of movement and time pressure. Her target engagement was so efficient it appeared rehearsed, her transitions between shooting positions fluid enough to maintain momentum while never compromising accuracy. Patterson and Martinez struggled through their exercises with performances that met basic requirements while exposing limitations in their ability to coordinate multiple skills under pressure. Their navigation was adequate, their shooting acceptable, their tactical movement competent enough to avoid complete failure, but their integration of skills lacked the seamless efficiency that characterized truly experienced infantry soldiers. Elena continued through the course with machine-like precision, each checkpoint conquered through superior technique, while her overall time remained well ahead of her competitor's pace. Her performance suggested someone who had executed similar missions countless times under circumstances considerably more demanding than training exercises, her competence automatic rather than conscious. The third checkpoint presented close-quarters combat scenarios where soldiers encountered simulated enemies, requiring immediate physical response while maintaining situational awareness for additional threats. Rodriguez's combat, was effective if unrefined, his techniques adequate for overcoming individual opponents, but lacking the tactical awareness needed for complex scenarios. Elena's combat response was devastating in its efficiency. Each engagement concluded with minimum time and energy expenditure, while her situational awareness remained absolute throughout. Her techniques demonstrated the same superior training that had dominated the morning's exercises, but integrated into tactical scenarios that revealed the true depth of her combat experience. Morrison tracked Elena's progress through the exercise with growing amazement, his experienced, eye-recognizing performance that exceeded even his highest expectations for advanced infantry soldiers. Her coordination of multiple skills under pressure suggested training and experience that belonged in special operations rather than standard infantry assignments. Yet her personnel file contained no indicators of such background. The final checkpoint required soldiers to coordinate all previous skills into a single complex scenario involving navigation, multiple target engagement, tactical movement, and close-quarters combat, while operating under maximum time pressure. Rodriguez approached the challenge with determination that couldn't compensate for the tactical limitations that previous checkpoints had exposed. Elena executed the final challenge with mechanical perfection, her performance so superior it appeared to belong to a different category of soldier entirely. Every skill was demonstrated with textbook precision, while her overall coordination suggested someone who had operated in circumstances where such integration was routine rather than exceptional. Rodriguez completed his exercise with a respectable time and acceptable performance that met basic infantry standards while exposing the limitations that Elena's superior abilities had consistently highlighted. His frustration was evident as he realized that the comprehensive test had only emphasized the gap between his competence and her apparent expertise. Elena finished the integrated exercise with a time that shattered existing course records while maintaining perfect execution across every skill category. Her performance had demonstrated not just superior individual abilities, but the kind of tactical sophistication that developed only through extensive real-world application under extreme stress conditions. The assembled soldiers stared at Elena with expressions of complete bewilderment as Morrison announced her results. Their initial assumptions about the quiet newcomer systematically destroyed through undeniable demonstration of capabilities that exceeded their understanding. Rodriguez stood in stunned silence, his confidence completely shattered by Elena's overwhelming superiority across every aspect of infantry competence. Williams approached Morrison with evident concern about Elena's performance, his experienced assessment recognizing capabilities that suggested training and experience far beyond anything reflected in standard personnel files. Something about Elena's demonstrated abilities demanded investigation, her competence too comprehensive to result from conventional military development. Morrison's office felt smaller than usual as he spread Elena's personnel file across his desk, the standard documentation appearing increasingly inadequate when measured against the extraordinary performance he had witnessed throughout the day. Williams sat across from him, both men studying paperwork that failed to explain how a supposedly ordinary infantry soldier had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded their most experienced operators. The file contained routine information that painted Elena as competent but unremarkable, her assignments standard, her evaluations solid without being exceptional. Nothing in the documentation suggested the kind of advanced training that would explain her systematic dominance across every skill category, her performance so superior it belonged in a different classification entirely. Her deployment records listed Afghanistan with minimal detail, the entries generic enough to describe thousands of infantry soldiers without revealing the specific nature of her assignments or the circumstances that had forged her obvious expertise. Williams traced the timeline with his finger, noting gaps and inconsistencies that suggested information had been deliberately omitted or classified beyond their access level. Morrison reached for his secure phone, dialing the personnel office with growing determination to understand exactly who Elena Vasquez really was beneath the carefully sanitized documentation. Her demonstrated abilities demanded investigation, her competence too comprehensive to result from the conventional training that her file suggested. Meanwhile, Elena sat in the barracks common area, conducting her routine equipment maintenance with the same methodical precision that had characterized every action since her arrival. Rodriguez and his companions occupied the opposite corner, their voices deliberately loud as they continued their increasingly desperate attempts to rationalize her superior performance through theories that grew more strained with each iteration. "She's got to be some kind of special forces washout," Rodriguez insisted, his explanation ignoring the fact that washouts didn't typically demonstrate the superior competence that Elena had displayed consistently. Maybe she couldn't handle the psychological pressure and got transferred to regular infantry to avoid complete discharge from the service. Patterson nodded agreement with Rodriguez's theory, desperate to find some framework that would explain Elena's abilities while preserving their sense of superiority. That would explain the skills without making her better than us, he added, his logic revealing the psychological need to diminish her achievements rather than acknowledge their implications about relative competence. Elena continued her equipment maintenance without acknowledging their conversation, her attention focused on tasks that seemed more important than responding to theories designed to protect their damaged egos. Her indifference frustrated Rodriguez further, denying him the defensive reaction he needed to justify his increasingly aggressive speculation about her background. Martinez attempted to support the group's fragmenting confidence with additional theories about Elena's mysterious competence. "Maybe she's one of those military contractors who joined regular service," he suggested, his explanation ignoring the fact that contractors didn't typically demonstrate the tactical sophistication that Elena had displayed throughout the integrated exercise. The theories grew increasingly elaborate as the soldiers struggled to reconcile Elena's superior performance with their need to maintain psychological dominance over someone they had initially dismissed as weak and incompetent. Each explanation revealed their inability to accept that they had simply misjudged her capabilities from the beginning. Elena finished her equipment maintenance and began studying technical manuals with the same focused attention that had characterized her approach to every challenge. Her reading was systematic and thorough, taking notes with mechanical precision while completely ignoring the continued speculation about her identity and background. Rodriguez's frustration reached a breaking point as Elena's calm indifference denied him the confrontation he needed to re-establish his dominance through verbal aggression. "You're going to tell us eventually," he announced, approaching her position with the forced confidence of someone whose authority had been systematically undermined throughout the day. Elena looked up from her manual with the same steady gaze that had remained unchanged since her arrival, her expression calm but unreadable. "Tell you what?" she asked, her voice carrying the patient tone of someone dealing with persistent but irrelevant interruptions to more important activities. Rodriguez stepped closer, his body language designed to intimidate through physical presence that had proven effective against soldiers who lacked Elena's obvious comfort with confrontation. "Were you really trained, what unit you came from, why you're pretending to be regular infantry when you're obviously something else entirely?" Elena returned her attention to the technical manual without answering, her dismissal complete and devastating in its efficiency. Rodriguez's face flushed with anger as he realized that his attempt at intimidation had been ignored rather than feared, his psychological pressure techniques proving ineffective against someone who viewed his aggression as irrelevant noise. The common area fell silent as other soldiers became aware of the confrontation, their attention drawn by Rodriguez's increasingly aggressive tone and Elena's calm indifference to his demands for explanation. The social dynamics that had governed the unit since morning were shifting visibly as Rodriguez's presumed authority crumbled against Elena's unshakable composure. Morrison entered the common area, with Williams following close behind. Both men, carrying expressions that suggested their investigation, had revealed information that changed everything they thought they understood about Elena's background and assignment to their unit. The soldiers immediately recognized the serious nature of their demeanor, conversations stopping as attention focused on the approaching officers. "Vasquez," Morrison called, his voice carrying official authority that transformed the casual confrontation into formal military business. Elena immediately stood and assumed the position of attention, her response automatic and precise, while Rodriguez and his companions scrambled to organize themselves appropriately for the officer's presence. Morrison studied Elena, with new understanding visible in his expression, his assessment now informed by information that explained her extraordinary performance, while raising additional questions about her assignment to their standard infantry unit. "Report to my office immediately," he ordered, his tone carrying implications that suggested Elena's true identity was about to be revealed. Elena followed Morrison and Williams toward the headquarters building, while Rodriguez and his companions watched with expressions ranging from confusion to growing concern. The formal summons suggested that their morning speculation about Elena's background was about to be replaced by official information that would either validate or destroy their theories about her mysterious competence. The barracks buzzed with nervous conversation as soldiers attempted to interpret the significance of Elena's formal summons. Their speculation now tinged with the realization that they might have been systematically underestimating someone whose true capabilities and background were considerably more significant than they had imagined. Rodriguez stood in uncomfortable silence, his confidence completely shattered by the day's events and the growing recognition that his assumptions about Elena had been not just wrong, but dangerously naive. The quiet mouse he had planned to dominate had proven to be something entirely different, her capabilities suggesting a background that would soon be officially revealed. Patterson and Martinez exchanged worried glances as they realized that their participation in Rodriguez's harassment campaign might have consequences they hadn't anticipated if Elena's true identity proved to be as significant as her demonstrated abilities suggested. The social hierarchy they had assumed was fixed was about to be permanently altered by whatever information Morrison had discovered. Elena disappeared into the headquarters building while the assembled soldiers waited in tense anticipation for official confirmation of what her performance had already demonstrated: that their initial assessment of the quiet newcomer had been catastrophically wrong, and that the truth about her background would transform every assumption they had made about their own relative competence and status within the unit. Morrison's office felt charged with tension as Elena stood at attention before his desk, her posture perfect, while Williams closed the door with deliberate care that suggested the coming conversation required absolute privacy. The standard personnel file lay open beside a secure terminal displaying classified information that painted an entirely different picture of the soldier they had initially underestimated. "We've been making some calls about your background, Vasquez," Morrison began, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose understanding of reality had been fundamentally altered by the information displayed on his screen. "Your standard file doesn't tell the whole story, does it?" His question hung in the air like a challenge, demanding honesty from someone whose mysterious competence had finally attracted official scrutiny. Elena maintained her position of attention without responding, her expression unchanged as she waited for Morrison to reveal whatever information his investigation had uncovered. Her silence suggested someone accustomed to conversations where classified background were discussed by people with appropriate clearance levels, her comfort with the situation confirming that deeper secrets lay beneath her carefully constructed ordinary appearance. Williams leaned forward in his chair, studying Elena with new respect visible in his expression as he processed information that explained her extraordinary performance, while raising additional questions about her assignment to their unit. "Your combat training didn't come from standard infantry schools, did it?" he asked, his question seeking confirmation of suspicions that Elena's demonstrated abilities belonged in special operations rather than conventional forces. Elena's response maintained the same economy of words that had frustrated her interrogators since her arrival, but her tone carried subtle acknowledgement that the conversation had moved beyond surface-level speculation. "Some additional training," she admitted, her phrasing carefully neutral, while suggesting depths of experience that couldn't be discussed in detail without appropriate security clearances. Morrison turned his secure terminal toward Elena, displaying classification levels that explained why her standard personnel file had contained such limited information about her actual assignments and training. "Your real service record makes interesting reading," he said, his voice carrying amazement mixed with growing understanding of the security implications surrounding her presence in their unit. The classified documentation revealed deployments and assignments that belonged in special operations rather than conventional infantry. Elena's true background, explaining her systematic dominance across every skill category, while raising questions about why someone with her qualifications had been assigned to their standard training unit. Her competence wasn't anomalous, but rather the natural result of training and experience that exceeded anything in their normal operational environment. Elena remained at attention while Morrison and Williams processed the implications of information that transformed their understanding of her capabilities from mysterious to classified but explicable. Her calm acceptance of their scrutiny suggested someone accustomed to having her background investigated by officers who discovered that reality exceeded their initial assumptions about her qualifications. Williams shook his head in amazement as he reviewed Elena's actual training history. The documentation revealing schools and certifications that explained her superior performance, while highlighting the security sensitivity that had kept such information classified. "No wonder she made our best soldiers look like amateurs," he muttered, his comment carrying newfound respect for someone whose true qualifications had been hidden behind deliberately misleading standard documentation. Morrison closed the classified files and studied Elena with an expression that mixed professional admiration with concern about the security implications of her assignment to their unit. "Your presence here isn't coincidental, is it?" he asked, his question seeking confirmation that Elena's assignment involved purposes beyond the routine training that had characterized their morning exercises. Elena's response maintained careful neutrality while acknowledging that her assignment involved considerations beyond conventional personnel management. "Sometimes regular units need evaluation," she replied, her phrasing suggesting that her superior performance had been part of an assessment process rather than accidental demonstration of hidden capabilities. The admission transformed Morrison's understanding of the day's events from routine training evaluation to formal assessment by someone whose qualifications exceeded his own in multiple areas. Elena hadn't been struggling to meet their standards, but rather evaluating whether their training met standards appropriate for soldiers who might face real-world challenges requiring the kind of competence she had demonstrated consistently. Williams leaned back in his chair, processing the realization that Elena's systematic superiority across every exercise had been professional evaluation rather than competitive demonstration. She had been testing their unit's capabilities while they had been assuming she was the weak link requiring remedial attention, their misjudgment complete and embarrassing in its implications about their assessment abilities. Morrison considered the social dynamics that Elena's revelation would create when her true background became known to the soldiers who had spent the morning systematically underestimating her capabilities. Rodriguez and his companions had invested significant psychological energy in maintaining their superiority over someone whose actual qualifications made their harassment appear not just inappropriate, but professionally dangerous. "Your cover story was effective," Morrison admitted, his comment acknowledging the skill with which Elena had maintained her ordinary appearance while conducting her evaluation. "Most soldiers wouldn't have recognized your true capabilities until you chose to demonstrate them during the exercises." Elena's slight smile suggested amusement at the memory of Rodriguez's confident predictions about her anticipated failures. His aggressive dismissal of someone whose actual background made his proclaimed expertise appear amateur by comparison. Her patience with their harassment had been professional tolerance rather than personal weakness, her calm responses reflecting confidence built through genuine rather than imagined combat experience. Williams considered the training implications of Elena's presence, recognizing opportunities to improve their unit's capabilities through exposure to someone whose standards have been forged in circumstances considerably more demanding than their routine assignments. "Your evaluation findings will probably recommend significant improvements in our training protocols," he said, his statement seeking confirmation that their performance had revealed deficiencies requiring correction. Elena nodded acknowledgement of Williams' assessment, while maintaining the diplomatic neutrality appropriate for someone whose mission involved evaluation rather than criticism. "Every unit has areas for improvement," she replied, her phrasing suggesting that their capabilities were adequate, if not exceptional, when measured against the standards she had been trained to apply. Morrison realized that Elena's departure would leave his unit with knowledge of their limitations, exposed through comparison with genuine excellence. Their confidence potentially damaged by recognition that their presumed competence had been revealed as merely adequate when tested against real standards. Her presence had been educational, even as it was professionally humbling. The afternoon shadows lengthened outside Morrison's office windows as the three soldiers concluded their conversation. Elena's true identity, now revealed, while the implications of her assessment continued to resonate through their understanding of their unit's actual capabilities. Her morning performance had been professional evaluation disguised as routine training. Her superior competence, deliberate demonstration rather than accidental revelation. Elena prepared to return to the barracks where Rodriguez and his companions waited in nervous anticipation of whatever information Morrison's investigation had revealed about her background. Their harassment campaign was about to be transformed from aggressive dominance behavior into embarrassing demonstration of their inability to recognize genuine competence when it appeared in unexpected packages. Morrison and Williams watched Elena leave their office with newfound respect for someone whose assignment had tested their unit's capabilities while revealing the gaps between their perceived and actual competence. Her evaluation would continue, but the social dynamics had been permanently altered by the revelation that the quiet mouse they had underestimated possessed qualifications that exceeded their most experienced operators. Elena's return to the barracks created immediate tension as every conversation stopped and all eyes tracked her movement across the common area. The soldiers' speculation about her formal summons reaching fever pitch while they searched her expression for clues about whatever information Morrison had revealed during their private meeting. Rodriguez positioned himself near the entrance, his body language suggesting someone prepared for confrontation despite the growing uncertainty about Elena's true identity. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Elena resumed her position at the same table where she had been studying technical manuals before Morrison's summons, her calm demeanor unchanged despite the obvious scrutiny from soldiers whose assumptions about her background had been systematically challenged throughout the day. Her indifference to their attention suggested someone accustomed to being evaluated by people whose opinions carried no professional significance. Rodriguez's patience cracked first, his need for information overriding his damaged confidence as he approached Elena's position with the aggressive stride of someone whose authority had been undermined but not yet officially challenged. "What did Morrison want?" he demanded, his voice carrying forced authority designed to mask the uncertainty that Elena's superior performance had created in his assessment of their relative status. Elena looked up from her manual with the same steady gaze that had remained unchanged since her arrival, her expression calm, but unreadable as she considered whether Rodriguez deserved any explanation about conversations that involved classified information and security considerations beyond his clearance level. "Official business," she replied simply, her brevity denying him the detailed information he needed to maintain his psychological dominance. The non-answer frustrated Rodriguez further, his face flushing with anger as he realized that Elena's formal summons might have involved discussions that elevated her status within the unit's hierarchy while diminishing his own presumed leadership position. "You think you're special now?" he asked, his question revealing the insecurity that Elena's consistent superior performance had created in his self-assessment. Patterson and Martinez flanked Rodriguez in a show of solidarity that felt increasingly desperate as they recognized that their morning's harassment campaign might have targeted someone whose actual qualifications made their aggressive behavior appear not just inappropriate, but professionally dangerous. Their confident mockery had been replaced by growing concern about the implications of Elena's mysterious background. Elena returned her attention to the technical manual without acknowledging Rodriguez's question, her dismissal complete and devastating in its efficiency. The assembled soldiers recognized the power dynamic that had emerged. Elena's calm indifference to Rodriguez's attempts at intimidation, revealing the confidence of someone whose actual authority exceeded his presumed leadership position. Williams entered the barracks with an expression that suggested official business requiring immediate attention from all personnel, his demeanor carrying the weight of someone whose understanding of the unit's social dynamics had been fundamentally altered by recent revelations about Elena's true background and mission. "Formation in 5 minutes," he announced, his voice commanding instant compliance from soldiers who recognized the serious nature of his tone. The soldiers scrambled to organize themselves for unexpected formation, while speculation about Elena's summons intensified, their conversations carrying nervous energy as they attempted to interpret the significance of William's serious demeanor and Elena's continued calm indifference to their scrutiny. Rodriguez's confident predictions about exposing Elena's weaknesses had been replaced by growing anxiety about what official information was about to be revealed. Elena secured her materials with the same methodical precision that had characterized every action since her arrival, her movements suggesting someone who had anticipated this development and was prepared for whatever disclosure Williams planned to make. Her lack of concern about the impending formation contrasted sharply with the nervous energy that characterized the other soldiers' preparations. The formation assembled with unusual speed as soldiers recognized that Williams' demeanor suggested significant rather than routine announcements. Their attention focused on Elena while they attempted to gauge her reaction to whatever official business was about to transform their understanding of the morning's events. Rodriguez positioned himself prominently in the front row, his stance designed to maintain visible leadership despite his growing uncertainty about his actual status. Williams surveyed the assembled soldiers with a systematic assessment of someone whose professional understanding had been enhanced by access to classified information that explained the morning's surprising developments. The expression on his face suggested that routine assumptions about unit dynamics were about to be officially corrected through disclosure of facts that had been hidden for operational security reasons. Elena took her position in the formation with characteristic calm, her placement automatically assigned by the social hierarchy that had crystallized during the morning but was about to be permanently altered by official revelation of information that would transform every assumption about relative qualifications and authority within the unit. Morrison emerged from the headquarters building carrying documents that suggested formal rather than routine business, his approach to the formation deliberate and measured as he prepared to disclose information that would resolve the mystery surrounding Elena's background while creating new understanding of her assignment to their unit. The assembled soldiers recognized the significance of his formal approach. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the formation area as Morrison positioned himself before the assembled soldiers, his expression carrying the weight of someone about to reveal information that would fundamentally alter their understanding of their unit's composition and the morning's training evaluation. Elena remained at attention with perfect military bearing, while Rodriguez and his companions waited with growing apprehension. Morrison opened the folder containing Elena's actual service record, the classified documentation revealing assignments and qualifications that belonged in special operations rather than conventional infantry, while explaining her systematic superiority across every skill category they had tested during the morning exercises. His preparation to read from official sources suggested that speculation was about to be replaced by verified facts. The tension in the formation reached breaking point as soldiers recognized that Morrison's formal approach indicated revelations considerably more significant than routine personnel announcements. Their morning's assumptions about Elena's background about to be either confirmed or catastrophically corrected through official disclosure of information that had been classified for operational security reasons. Rodriguez's confidence wavered visibly as he realized that his aggressive harassment of Elena might have targeted someone whose actual qualifications exceeded his own by margins that would make his behavior appear not just inappropriate, but professionally suicidal. The quiet mouse he had planned to dominate was about to be officially revealed as something entirely different. Morrison cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice carrying across the formation with the authority of someone whose words would permanently transform the social dynamics that had governed their unit since Elena's arrival. The revelation was about to begin, exposing truths that would validate Elena's demonstrated competence while destroying every assumption that Rodriguez and his companions had made about their relative status and qualifications. Morrison's voice cut through the afternoon air with official authority as he addressed the assembled formation, his words carrying the weight of revelations that would permanently alter every assumption the soldiers had made about their unit's composition and the morning's extraordinary training results. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez has been conducting an official evaluation of this unit's readiness and capabilities, he announced, his statement immediately transforming their understanding of Elena's presence from routine assignment to classified mission. The assembled soldiers stood in stunned silence as Morrison's words sank in. Their morning's harassment campaign suddenly revealed as systematic misjudgment of someone whose actual authority exceeded their own by margins they were only beginning to comprehend. Rodriguez's face drained of color as he realized that his aggressive dominance behavior had targeted an evaluator whose assessment would determine their unit's official readiness rating. Morrison continued reading from Elena's classified service record, his voice steady as he revealed information that explained her superior performance while highlighting the security sensitivity that had required her true background to remain hidden until the evaluation's completion. Staff Sergeant Vasquez is a graduate of the Army's most advanced combat schools, including Ranger School, Special Forces Qualification Course, and classified programs that cannot be detailed in this setting. Rodriguez swayed slightly as the implications of Elena's actual qualifications destroyed every assumption he had made about their relative competence and status, his proclaimed combat experience suddenly appearing amateur when measured against genuine special operations training that placed Elena in an entirely different category of soldier. His betting against her success had been ignorant rather than confident assessment. Williams stepped forward to provide additional context that would help the soldiers understand the magnitude of their misjudgment, his expression carrying professional respect that had been absent during the morning's exercises when Elena's true identity remained classified. Staff Sergeant Vasquez has completed multiple deployments in classified operations that cannot be discussed, but her combat record includes achievements that place her among the Army's most experienced operators. Patterson and Martinez exchange horrified glances as they realized that their participation in Rodriguez's harassment campaign had targeted someone whose actual qualifications made their mockery appear not just inappropriate, but laughably naive. Their confident predictions about Elena's anticipated failures had been based on complete ignorance of her true capabilities and background. Morrison's reading continued with information that painted Elena's morning performance as professional restraint rather than maximum effort, her systematic superiority across every skill category representing controlled demonstration rather than competitive display of her actual capabilities. Her evaluation of this unit has been ongoing since her arrival, and her assessment will determine future training requirements and readiness classifications. Elena remained at attention with perfect military bearing while Morrison revealed the truth about her assignment. Her expression unchanged despite the visible shock that her disclosure was creating among soldiers who had spent the morning systematically underestimating someone whose professional qualifications exceeded their collective experience by enormous margins. The revelation that Elena's quiet responses to questions about her deployment history had been operational security rather than evasion devastated Rodriguez's confidence completely, his aggressive interrogation tactics suddenly appearing as harassment of a superior operator whose patience had been professional courtesy rather than personal weakness. His demands for detailed explanations had been ignored by someone whose actual experience was classified beyond his clearance level. Morrison closed Elena's service record and addressed the formation with the serious tone of someone whose unit's performance had been officially evaluated by standards considerably higher than their routine training typically demanded. Staff Sergeant Vasquez's assessment will be forwarded to higher headquarters and training modifications will be implemented based on her professional recommendations for improvement. The assembled soldiers began to comprehend that Elena's superior performance had been evaluation rather than competition. Her demonstration of textbook technique serving as measurement of their capabilities against standards that genuine special operations experience had taught her to apply automatically. Their morning's training had been professional assessment, disguised as routine exercises. Williams provided additional clarification that helped the soldiers understand why Elena's true background had remained classified during her evaluation period, operational security requiring that her assessment be conducted without the artificial performance improvements that knowledge of her qualifications might have created. Her evaluation measured your natural capabilities rather than your ability to perform for someone you knew was testing you. Rodriguez's humiliation was complete as he realized that his attempts to establish dominance over Elena had been witnessed by someone whose actual authority within the military hierarchy exceeded his own by levels that made his aggressive behavior appear not just inappropriate but career-threatening. His harassment of a special operations veteran would be documented in official reports. Morrison's announcement concluded with information about Elena's departure schedule, her evaluation complete, and her assessment ready for submission to commanders who would use her professional recommendations to improve the unit's training protocols and readiness standards. Staff Sergeant Vasquez will be departing tomorrow to begin her next assignment, another evaluation mission that required her specialized qualifications. Elena's slight nod acknowledged Morrison's announcement, while her expression suggested satisfaction with the completion of her mission objectives. Her professional assessment of the unit's capabilities, now ready for official submission to authorities who would implement whatever training improvements her evaluation had identified as necessary for enhanced readiness. The formation remained at attention while Morrison and Williams processed the implications of Elena's revelation for the unit's future training requirements. Their understanding of their soldiers' actual capabilities, now informed by comparison with genuine special operations standards that had revealed both strengths and areas requiring significant improvement. Rodriguez stood in complete shock as the magnitude of his misjudgment became clear. His confident predictions about Elena's anticipated failures transformed into documented evidence of his inability to recognize genuine competence when it appeared in unexpected packages. His harassment campaign had targeted someone whose qualifications made his proclaimed expertise appear amateur. Patterson and Martinez struggled to process their participation in systematic underestimation of someone whose actual background placed her among the Army's most experienced operators. Their mockery of Elena's quiet demeanor suddenly revealed as ignorant dismissal of someone whose confidence was based on genuine rather than imagined combat experience. The afternoon shadows lengthened across the formation area as the soldiers absorbed the reality that their morning speculation about Elena's mysterious background had been replaced by official confirmation that their most outrageous theories had actually underestimated rather than exaggerated her true qualifications and experience within the special operations community. Elena's departure would leave the unit with enhanced understanding of their actual capabilities measured against standards that genuine combat experience had taught her to apply. Her evaluation serving as professional development opportunity that would improve their readiness through exposure to techniques and standards that routine training rarely provided. The formation dispersed in stunned silence as soldiers processed the magnitude of their misjudgment, Rodriguez remaining frozen in place, while his companions drifted away with expressions of complete bewilderment at the revelation that their harassment campaign had targeted one of the Army's most qualified special operations veterans. The quiet mouse they had planned to dominate had been evaluating their competence with standards forged through genuine combat experience. Elena collected her equipment with the same methodical precision that had characterized every action since her arrival. Her movements now viewed with newfound respect by soldiers who finally understood that her careful attention to detail reflected professional habits developed through operations where mistakes meant casualties rather than training scores. Her routine equipment maintenance had been the behavior of someone whose survival had depended on perfect gear accountability. Rodriguez approached Elena's position with hesitant steps, his earlier confidence replaced by the recognition that his aggressive behavior had been witnessed and documented by someone whose professional assessment would be forwarded to commanders capable of ending his military career. "Staff Sergeant," he began, his voice carrying uncertainty that contrasted sharply with the arrogant dismissal that had characterized his morning interactions. Elena looked up from her gear with the same calm expression that had remained unchanged throughout Rodriguez's harassment campaign, her steady gaze now carrying the weight of professional evaluation rather than personal tolerance of inappropriate behavior. Her silence invited Rodriguez to continue while suggesting that his words would be measured against standards considerably higher than he had demonstrated. "I want to apologize for this morning," Rodriguez continued, his statement carrying the desperation of someone whose career prospects had been fundamentally altered by the revelation of Elena's true identity and mission. "We didn't know who you were or why you were here, and our behavior was completely inappropriate for soldiers representing this unit." Elena's response maintained the professional neutrality appropriate for someone whose mission involved evaluation rather than personal interaction, her tone carrying neither forgiveness nor condemnation, but rather the detached assessment of someone recording observations for official report. "Your behavior provided valuable information about unit dynamics and leadership development needs," she replied, her phrasing suggesting that Rodriguez's harassment had become data points in her professional assessment. The implication that his aggressive dominance behavior had been documented as evidence of leadership deficiencies devastated Rodriguez's remaining confidence. His recognition that Elena's evaluation would include specific examples of his inappropriate conduct, creating anxiety about official consequences that extended far beyond unit-level embarrassment. His harassment campaign had provided Elena with concrete examples of problems requiring correction. Patterson and Martinez maintained careful distance from the conversation while observing Elena's interaction with Rodriguez, their own participation in the morning's harassment creating similar concerns about how their behavior had been documented in Elena's official assessment of unit readiness and professional standards. Their confident mockery had been recorded as evidence of deficiencies requiring training intervention. Elena resumed her equipment preparation while Rodriguez struggled to find words that might mitigate the professional damage his behavior had created, his earlier certainty about his leadership capabilities replaced by recognition that his conduct had been evaluated by someone whose standards had been forged through circumstances considerably more demanding than his claimed experience. Williams approached the group with expressions that mixed professional respect for Elena's qualifications with concern about the unit dynamics that her evaluation had exposed, his understanding of leadership development enhanced by observing how Elena's presence had revealed both strengths and critical weaknesses in his soldiers' professional behavior and tactical competence. "Staff Sergeant Vasquez," Williams began, his tone carrying the formal respect appropriate for addressing someone whose qualifications exceeded his own experience in multiple specialized areas. "Is there anything specific you need for your departure preparations or additional observations you want to make before concluding your evaluation?" Elena's response reflected the thoroughness that had characterized her approach to every aspect of the evaluation mission, her assessment complete, but her professional standards requiring attention to details that would enhance the value of her official recommendations. "The evaluation is comprehensive," she replied, her phrasing suggesting that her documentation included both positive observations and areas requiring significant improvement. Morrison joined the conversation with evident curiosity about Elena's assessment findings, his professional development enhanced by exposure to evaluation standards that genuine special operations experience had taught her to apply automatically. "Your recommendations will be implemented immediately," he assured Elena, his commitment to improvement reflecting recognition that her assessment represented opportunity for enhanced unit capabilities. Elena acknowledged Morrison's commitment while maintaining the diplomatic neutrality appropriate for someone whose mission involved professional evaluation rather than personal criticism of individual soldiers or unit leadership. Every unit has potential for improvement when provided with appropriate training resources and leadership development opportunities, she replied, her statement offering hope while acknowledging identified deficiencies. The conversation concluded with Elena's preparation for departure, while Rodriguez and his companions remained in uncomfortable awareness that their behavior had been professionally documented by someone whose assessment would determine future training requirements and leadership evaluation criteria. Their harassment campaign had become case study material for improving unit standards. Rodriguez's final attempt at conversation reflected his desperation to understand how his confident assessment of Elena's capabilities had been so catastrophically wrong, his need for explanation overriding his embarrassment about approaching someone whose qualifications made his proclaimed expertise appear amateur. "How do we miss who you really were?" he asked, his question seeking insight that might prevent future misjudgments. Elena's response carried the patient tone of someone whose experience included teaching lessons that could only be learned through direct demonstration rather than theoretical instruction. "Competence doesn't always announce itself loudly," she replied, her observation offering wisdom while highlighting the fundamental error that had characterized Rodriguez's approach to leadership and assessment. The evening shadows lengthened across the barracks area as Elena completed her departure preparations, her mission accomplished, and her evaluation ready for submission to commanders who would use her professional recommendations to enhance unit capabilities through improved training protocols and leadership development programs. Her presence had served as comprehensive assessment of their actual, rather than assumed competence. Rodriguez watched Elena's preparations with a recognition that his aggressive harassment had been witnessed by someone whose professional standards had been developed through genuine combat experience rather than training exercises, his behavior documented as evidence of leadership deficiencies requiring correction through enhanced professional development opportunities. The assembled soldiers observed Elena's methodical preparation with newfound respect for someone whose quiet competence had been misinterpreted as weakness, while actually representing the confidence that came from surviving circumstances where genuine rather than imagined capabilities determined outcomes. Her evaluation had measured their performance against standards that real-world experience had taught her to apply. Elena's departure would leave the unit with enhanced understanding of their actual capabilities when measured against genuine special operations standards, her assessment serving as professional development opportunity that would improve their readiness through exposure to techniques and evaluation criteria that routine training rarely provided to conventional infantry soldiers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the departure area as Elena shouldered her duffel bag with the same methodical precision that had characterized every action during her evaluation mission. Her equipment secured according to standards that had been forged through operations where proper preparation meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The soldiers gathered to witness her departure carried expressions of respect that had replaced their initial mockery. Morrison approached Elena with her official orders and evaluation documentation, his demeanor reflecting the professional admiration that had developed through exposure to genuine special operations competence, disguised as routine infantry assignment. "Your assessment has been submitted to division headquarters," he reported, his voice carrying satisfaction that his unit had been evaluated by someone whose standards would enhance their capabilities through improved training protocols. Elena accepted the documentation with acknowledgement that suggested completion of another successful evaluation mission, her professional satisfaction evident in the slight smile that had been absent during the harassment and skepticism that characterized her arrival. "The mission parameters have been met," she replied, her phrasing indicating that her assessment objectives had been accomplished despite the initial resistance from soldiers who had misjudged her purpose and qualifications. Rodriguez stood at respectful distance with his companions, their earlier confidence replaced by recognition that their harassment campaign had been documented by someone whose professional assessment would influence their future training requirements and leadership development opportunities. The quiet mouse they had planned to dominate was departing as one of the Army's most qualified special operations veterans. Williams approached to provide final coordination for Elena's departure, while expressing professional gratitude for the learning opportunity that her evaluation had provided to soldiers whose capabilities had been measured against standards they had never previously encountered. "Your presence here has been educational for everyone involved," he said, his statement acknowledging both the training value and the humbling experience of comparison with genuine excellence. Elena's response reflected the diplomatic professionalism appropriate for someone whose mission involved enhancement rather than criticism of unit capabilities. Her assessment complete, but her recommendations designed to build rather than destroy confidence. Every soldier showed potential for improvement when provided with appropriate challenges and standards, she replied, offering encouragement while acknowledging the development needs her evaluation had identified. The assembled soldiers, OBS, urged Elena's departure preparations with awareness that her evaluation had exposed both strengths and limitations in their professional competence. Her presence serving as comprehensive assessment that would result in enhanced training opportunities designed to elevate their capabilities to standards that genuine combat experience had taught her to apply automatically. Patterson approached with hesitant respect to offer personal acknowledgement of Elena's superior competence and his own misjudgment of her capabilities. His earlier mockery replaced by recognition that genuine expertise didn't always announce itself through obvious displays of aggression or boastful proclamations. "Staff Sergeant, I learned more this morning than in months of regular training," he admitted, his statement carrying the humility that came from exposure to standards he hadn't known existed. Elena accepted Patterson's acknowledgement with the patience of someone whose experience included teaching lessons that could only be learned through direct demonstration rather than theoretical instruction. Real competence develops quietly through consistent practice and genuine challenge, she replied, her observation offering wisdom about professional development that transcended military applications. Martinez joined the conversation with similar recognition of the educational value that Elena's evaluation had provided, his understanding of tactical competence enhanced by observing someone whose skills had been developed through circumstances considerably more demanding than their routine training exercises. "Your demonstration of proper technique was more valuable than any classroom instruction," he said, his comment acknowledging the superiority of practical example over theoretical knowledge. Elena's departure vehicle arrived with military punctuality, while the assembled soldiers formed an informal honor guard that reflected their transformed understanding of her qualifications and mission, their initial dismissal replaced by the respect that genuine competence inevitably earned when properly demonstrated under challenging circumstances that exposed both strengths and limitations. Morrison provided final salutes that carried official recognition of Elena's professional contribution to unit development, her evaluation serving as comprehensive assessment that would enhance their capabilities through improved training standards and leadership development programs based on special operations experience rather than conventional infantry protocols. Elena returned the salutes with military precision while boarding her departure vehicle, her mission accomplished and her evaluation ready for implementation by commanders who would use her professional recommendations to enhance unit readiness through exposure to standards that real-world combat experience had taught her to apply consistently and effectively. Rodriguez watched Elena's departure with complete recognition that his aggressive harassment had targeted someone whose actual qualifications exceeded his own by margins that made his proclaimed expertise appear amateur. His behavior documented as evidence of leadership deficiencies requiring correction through enhanced professional development and humility training that would prevent similar misjudgments in future assignments. The vehicle departed while the assembled soldiers remained in formation, their understanding of professional competence fundamentally altered by exposure to someone whose quiet confidence had been misinterpreted as weakness, while actually representing the assurance that came from surviving circumstances where genuine rather than imagined capabilities determined survival and mission success. Williams dismissed the formation with instructions that reflected the training improvements that Elena's evaluation had identified as necessary for enhanced unit capabilities. Her assessment serving as roadmap for professional development that would elevate their competence to standards that special operations experience had demonstrated were achievable through proper instruction and consistent practice under appropriate challenges. The soldiers dispersed with awareness that Elena's evaluation had measured their performance against standards they had never previously encountered, her presence serving as educational opportunity that would enhance their capabilities through improved training protocols designed to develop the kind of automatic competence that genuine combat experience had taught her to demonstrate consistently. Rodriguez returned to the barracks with complete understanding that his confident predictions about Elena's anticipated failures had been based on ignorant assessment of someone whose actual qualifications placed her among the Army's most experienced operators. His harassment campaign serving as documented evidence of the kind of leadership failures that proper evaluation could identify and correct. If this story moved you, share your thoughts about your favorite moment or character, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when others doubted them. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most impressive story to tell. The morning sun continued its arc across the training area where Elena had conducted her evaluation, the memory of her superior performance serving as permanent reminder that genuine competence often appeared in unexpected packages that required careful observation rather than superficial assessment to recognize and properly appreciate.